Hello, Jessica Garth. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Ms. Braveboy. Thank you so much for having me.
I know that you and I had a chance to chat, a few months ago, but if you could just remind everyone about your role in this office.
Absolutely, and it may have changed since then. I am one of the assistant chiefs of the Special Victims and Family Violence Unit. My primary responsibilities involve the circuit court or the supervision of our felony attorneys. And again, our unit handles a lot of different kinds of cases. We do intimate partner and domestic violence, sexual assaults of adults and children, physical assaults or abuse of children, as well as child pornography cases.
Yeah, I mean, your unit handles some of the most sensitive cases in our office. And I really appreciate the work that you all do, but also the care that you give to our victims. Because a lot of the situations are family situations. And I know that that can be particularly sensitive, not only for the victims, but also for witnesses in the case as well, because oftentimes they are testifying against people who they know, love, and have a relationship with, a longstanding relationship with. And so to be able to seek justice in those difficult circumstances, it's trying, but it's important. So I really want to thank you and of course your team for all the great work that you do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And so this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but for us, it's Domestic Violence Month every month because we're dealing with these cases. But we put a special focus or spotlight during the month of October on the work that we are doing around domestic violence. I know that during the pandemic, we saw close to about a 10% increase in domestic violence cases. So can you talk about, your thoughts when you saw those numbers, and then where do things stand now in your unit?
Sure. Initially upon seeing those numbers, unfortunately, I can't say that, I was surprised, because what the pandemic did was it cut a lot of people off from resources, and it forced a lot of people to stay in situations that they normally may have been able to, get out of or escape from. I know that there was, a housing crisis essentially, and that people were not able to get into housing, domestic violence shelters, and things of that nature. And also the fact that we were all on lockdown, which just puts us in, closer quarters together, and things were more stressful, which can lead to more, unfortunately, more abuse and more acts of assault. But what I am happy to say is that at least in Prince George's County, since those statistics have come out, our overall numbers are actually down. They're down approximately 16% for our overall domestic violence numbers, and our DV homicides are actually down about 50% from last year. So while these numbers, that's not consistent across the state or across the nation, but in Prince George's County, we are, doing something that is working, and I'm very proud to report those numbers.
So why don't you talk a little bit about some of the new initiatives that the Special Victim and Family Violence Unit has really led on that may, be the reason why we're seeing these results?
Absolutely. And I like to think of it sort of as a dual-pronged approach that we're taking at this point. In July of 2020, our office actually implemented, under your leadership, a high-risk and high lethality protocol in our review of all of our incoming domestic violence cases. And what that means is that one of the members of the leadership of our Special Victims Unit reviews every single domestic violence case that comes into our unit, whether it's a misdemeanor or whether it's a felony. And what we do is we flag cases that have certain indicators that have shown that, these cases, the parties involved in these cases, may unfortunately lead to more serious incidents or maybe to homicides in the future. And these are things like repeated offenses, the presence of weapons, non-fatal strangulations, or stalking, serious stalking, for example. And what we do is when we flag these cases, they become more targeted in our prosecutions. These are cases that we are not going to drop. These are cases where we're going to, if we have to, personally serve our victims. And they're basically cases with factors that we think that are going to lead to more serious outcomes if we don't intervene, at this time. Now, on the other side, we've also implemented a relatively new program focused on diversion. And I know it's a little weird to talk about diversion and to talk about domestic violence, but again, what we're trying to do here is to intervene as quickly as we can and to break the cycle. So what we're seeing is with low-level offenders, offenders who have committed serious assaults, or people who have committed acts of maybe malicious destruction of property or who are violating protective orders, if we can intervene early on, we're able to stop, again, more incidents from occurring and to stop more serious incidents from occurring. And we think that this has overall contributed to lower rates in Prince George's County.
And one of the other things that we also did was we implemented a strangulation protocol. So why don't you talk a little bit about that protocol and some of the cases we've been able to indict as a result of that new protocol?
Absolutely. So, again, under the leadership of you, Ms. Braveboy, and our office, we were able to pass, or to advocate for passing a law that made strangulation a first-degree assault, which is a felony assault. Prior to that change, we were having a lot of issues going forward on strangulation, non-fatal strangulation as a first-degree assault. The way the law read was that we were able to pursue first-degree assaults in cases where there was either an assault with a firearm or an assault with the intention to cause serious physical injury. But what we were seeing was that it was often difficult to convince a jury, or to have enough facts to convince a jury, that a non-fatal strangulation was an intent to cause a serious physical injury. So with the law change allowing strangulation to be explicitly a felony, it's allowed us to pursue these cases essentially, to the fullest extent of the law, which they should have been all along. One statistic that it's a very troubling statistic, but a survivor of a non-fatal strangulation is 750% more likely to be killed by his or her abuser. And that fact alone, you're almost 8 times more likely to be murdered by your abuser if you were strangled at one point, is absolutely staggering. And just what it means is that we had to make this change. We had to focus on making strangulation a more serious crime, and we certainly have pursued that change in our office. We're charging more strangulations as felonies, and I think we're seeing better results in preventing homicides as a result.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oftentimes what is difficult for us is, making sure that victims, stick with us as we seek justice on their behalf, and really on behalf of the entire community. And so a lot of times our victims, and we are very patient because we understand it takes some time, like maybe I think it's like 7 times for someone to actually leave. And so there are people who come to our office, seek support, and then decide they're not going to cooperate. If we have enough evidence, certainly we can move forward. Having the cooperation of the victim is always helpful in those prosecutions. But a lot of times it's just that victims don't know what they're going to do. They don't know what services are out there. They don't know how to leave. They just don't know. So what would you say, or what advice would you give? What suggestions would you give to victims out there? Because a lot of times they don't know where to start. They don't know where to start.
Right, and that is, of course, one of the important things about Domestic Violence Awareness Month is that we want people to become more, it's not just becoming aware of domestic violence happening, but what you can do, to get out of that situation and to help other people get out of that situation. So I think number one, the most important thing for people to recognize is that there are people out there who want to help you, both within our office and outside of our office. Of course, criminal prosecution is, one route that we can take, and of course, you and I believe it is one of the more important routes because it can help, take that offender out of the community for a little while. But it is important to know that there are other organizations that we are partnered with who can help you. Escaping the cycle of violence isn't easy, but it is absolutely something that anyone can do. And you're correct. It is about an average of 7 times for a person to leave an abusive relationship. So I think that if we can cut that down, we'll be making a big difference.
Absolutely. So kind of walk a victim through the process. So they've been victimized. They want to protect themselves.
There are a few different options, and I can't say that there's any one first step that is perfect for every victim or for every survivor. The most important first step that you can take is any step. It's taking that step at all. So you can, of course, always call law enforcement to respond, immediately. Especially if you're in medical distress, you would want law enforcement to come. You would want medical, help to come right away to help you. If you're able to get away from the situation, that is the most important thing, is your own safety and the safety of your children and any pets or anyone else that you care about who might be in the vicinity. If you choose not to call law enforcement and later on you decide you want to proceed, you can always file charges with the commissioner's office. And that's, again, proceeding down the criminal path, but that's also how you might pursue a protective order, is by filing with the commissioner's office. And even if you file charges through law enforcement, they will probably recommend, or at least advise you, you can go get a protective order with the commissioner's office. What you can also do is you can reach out to our community partners and to other agencies in the county who are not necessarily involved in law enforcement. And they may be able to advise you, to answer your questions, and to discuss with you some other options you might have, such as getting additional housing, whether you do want to pursue a criminal case, filing for divorce, and things of that nature.
So can you talk a little bit about the safe housing grant that our office has and how we've used that to assist victims?
The Safe Housing Grant has allowed us to assist victims who come forward in pursuit of the criminal justice process. But a lot of times people are often financially dependent on their abusers. And again, like I mentioned earlier, we've seen limited housing options due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So what this grant has allowed us to do is it allows us to assist people with getting physically out of dangerous situations and moved into new housing opportunities where they are safe, where they're able to focus on proceeding criminally if that's what they want to do, and able to focus on what they need to focus on to escape the abusive situations that they're in.
It is so important to have a plan, right? Oftentimes people go back because they don't have a plan to survive outside of the relationship with the abuser. And that's true for both same-sex and heterosexual couples, because there's this relationship and there's I guess, potentially some dependency that's developed by one of the partners for the other. And so there's a power dynamic there that exists regardless of the type of relationship it is that exists, that keeps one person thinking that they need that other person in order to survive. So are there partners that we have that can assist in developing a plan for individuals to really be self-sufficient? Like, where would they go? Can you talk about some of our partners?
Absolutely. And I do want to, point out one thing you mentioned, is that, we often think of domestic violence as an act between a male partner against a female victim. And I do want to say that our office is, again, under your leadership, very much committed to assisting victims and survivors who come from any type of relationship, whether it is LGBTQIA+, whether it's a male victim with a female abuser. We want to help everyone, and we are, trained to assist people who come from, all aspects of our community. So I did just want to address that briefly. That we do have a facility called the Family Justice Center, and it's located on actually the courthouse campus. It's not inside the courthouse, but it is directly outside the commissioner's entrance. So it's easy to stop by there and actually stop by the commissioner's office if you are coming in to file any sort of paperwork. What the Family Justice Center is it's basically a one-stop shop, and where many of our partners and other community organizations are housed within that building. So what you can do as a survivor is you can go there, you can register, let them know a little bit of your situation, and they can help refer you to some of our partners who can assist you with whatever it is that you need assistance with. And again, that may be housing, that may be, getting a divorce, it may be, a number of other things. And there are partners there who are experts in all those areas. Some of those partners are CAFI, House of Ruth, and many other individuals and organizations that we work with.
Absolutely. So, how do you feel about the work that not only you do, but as a supervisor, you're supervising younger, maybe less experienced attorneys? For some of them, it's their first time that they may be dealing with a very serious case of domestic violence, or let's say strangulation. How do you feel about the work that you do, and what message do you send to those attorneys who work for you?
The work that we do, as you mentioned, it can be very difficult. And I think that for some of the younger attorneys or newer attorneys, just realizing the violence that can exist in a loving relationship and the love still there can be something that's it's hard to hold in your mind if you've never been in that situation. I think the work that we do, and obviously I might be a bit biased, but I think the work that we do in our unit is probably the most important work that we do in our office. It doesn't just affect the two individuals who are involved, but as you said, it affects families, it affects the community, it affects how people relate to one another. So what I just try to advise people is, there are going to be frustrating moments, and there are going to be moments where you can't understand, how could a person go back to their abuser 6 or 7 times? It just doesn't seem, for someone who's never been in that situation, it doesn't seem like something that makes a lot of sense. But it's not our job to essentially judge that, and there are reasons that occurs. Our job is, when somebody comes forward, to do everything that we can to help them, to do what we can to keep them safe and the community safe. And I'm very proud of the attorneys in my unit, because each and every one of them holds those ideals, and will fight, I would say to the death, but we'll fight or fight as far as they need to get these cases prosecuted.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And that's honestly the attitude that we have to have, because justice is so important, but justice in these cases, when you're really talking about just how a person just is able to just live in their family, like with their family, that's tough, because oftentimes you're talking about families that may be on different sides of the issue, right? And so we are there to kind of stand in that gap and give them the strength really to really seek justice for themselves and put themselves first. And oftentimes people have been abused. They don't believe, they've been taught that they are not important. Trying to help them understand that they are important, and that their needs are important, their pain is important, their feelings are important, and that they deserve just, they deserve goodness, they deserve joy, they deserve all of these things that they've been told that they don't deserve. And so, it is a very interesting role that we play. But what I am grateful for is to have people like you who get it, and who are willing to fight that good fight and stand up for people sometimes when they don't want to stand up for themselves. And that happens too. And sometimes we pursue justice and obtain justice, even when the victim isn't so sure that they want to stick with us. But we have a job to do. And I believe we do it very, very well. So, Jessica, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate this discussion. I'm sure we'll have another one shortly, because it's always great to be able to connect with prosecutors like you, who just love their job and do it so well, but also inspire other people. And I think that's one of the things I've learned about you. When people describe you, when they hear you, they get inspired by the work that you do. So I want to thank you for that, and continue to do great work here in Prince George's County.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I enjoy our discussions as always. So looking forward to the next one.
Awesome.